Hey, good morning, all. Welcome, Glenn Daniels, COO of Touchstone Publishers, and welcome to today's podcast, Leadership Lessons in the News. As is our tradition, we want to start off with our question of the day. And that simply is, how many people are you going to persuade to be better today by your example? How many people are you going to persuade today to be better people by your example? Today, we want to discuss a topic that leaders sometimes tend to struggle with, but sometimes I've noticed leaders who just have knocked this out. That is, what is accountability? What is accountability? The dictionary definition is a little bit different than what I would put into a leadership role, but you can decide of a person, organization, or institution. It is required or expected to justify actions or decisions or responsible. So, in other words, it's required or it's an expectation that someone is able to justify their actions or their organization is able to justify their actions, their decisions. That's what that is. But what I've discovered in my work is that accountability is different for everybody, have a different definition. Your organization has a different definition. I challenge you now to think about what is the accountability definition for your organization. What does your organization view as accountability? What do they view you? How do they view you in the accountable role? Here's one thing that I want to give you as a preference here, as a pre-frame for the entire conversation. Humans want to know, they want to know what is expected of them. They want to know what is expected of them. They want you to tell them that. So they have something to shoot to get above or something just to shoot for. Even if you have a person on your team who's just there to collect the paycheck, if you tell them what they're accountable for in order to just collect that paycheck, they're going to reach for that. And while they're just trying to collect the paycheck and that's all, side note, you're building your bench so it can be easily replaced. Build that bench when it comes to hiring people. Get people in your parking lot on the bench ready to swing the bat because you know you got one or two or 10 people on your team. They're just there to see if they can get past the rules and get by with as little effort as possible. As a big rule, though, we all want to know what's expected of us. In fact, here's the question: what is expected of you? What is expected of you as a leader? How do the people who you report to expect you to behave? If you're an entrepreneur or if you're the owner of a small company, how do your stakeholders expect you to behave? What is it they expect? I'm going to ask you to go a little bit deeper. What are your top three KPIs? KPIs, key performance indicators. What are those top three things? I'm going to ask you, challenge you to write them down right now. In fact, you can put them in the comment if you dare. Say, these are the top three things. But chances are, as bad as it is to say this, chances are you don't know what they are because you haven't sat down with your boss and said, hey, how do you know I'm doing a good job? If you haven't done it, those report to you, they for sure haven't done it. Or you haven't went to them and said, hey, here are your top three KPIs. Let's talk about an example from an organization based in New York where they had to decide what the top three KPIs are. In order for this to happen, though, the leader, the operational manager, had to go to the CEO and say, what do you expect from me? What are my top three KPIs? Do you know the CEO had to say, come back tomorrow and I'll tell you? Okay. Precautionary tale. Those top three KPIs should be established as part of the work paperwork, as part of getting started, as part of the onboarding process. When you hire somebody, they should know what they're being measured on for that job. So the lady went back to talk to the CEO the next day, and he actually, to tell you the truth, asked for another day because he hadn't quite thought it all the way through. But he went ahead, and the next day, she's, he, she sat down with that executive leader, CEO, and said, okay, what are they? So he labeled, hard time talking sometimes. He labeled them out for her and he just said, this is what you need to do. This is my top 3 things that if you satisfy these 3 results, I'll give you excellent on your reviews. This is what I need to see happen. So she took them apart and she looked at them and she said, okay, what does each member of my team need to do in order to make these top 3 come true for me? What is each member of my team? So she started looking at each manager. So they were running Head Start centers. So the manager who ran this particular Head Start center, a lot of that work fell upon them to make sure the school center was safe, clean, orderly, and staffed. So what she decided to do was to simply sit down and create a checklist, a powerful checklist. Here's a powerful checklist. You may know your job better than most. You know, you may be a pilot of one of the largest commercial aircrafts in the world. But when you first get on that aircraft and throughout the entire flight, you have a checklist that you have to go through. Is this done? Is this done? Is this done? So she realized that was the most powerful way to have this school manager or center manager fully locked in, a checklist. So she and the center managers created a checklist that every single morning throughout the course of the day, they would check off. Was a parking lot clean of debris? Did you notice any odd cars or any odd vehicles in the parking lot? Was the signage on the building in working order? If it was well lit, if all the letters are there? Front of the building, clean, present. Just an entire checklist of everything she needed to do to see as she walked in the store. And she had to check them off. Get inside of the center, check off what she had to check off, everything. So they created a checklist for that person to go through on arrival, post arrival, when students arrived, before lunch was served. Create this checklist. And you know, the thing is, the better people got at the job, the more they could automatically check off on the checklist because they just kind of knew it was there, so they had time to check it off and just get to it. But she cautioned her team, said if you ever check something on this list off that you didn't do, and it comes to light, that will be a cardinal sin. You will be fired for forging documentation. Okay, you can't do that. You have to absolutely be honest, and that's what she told them. Be honest. If you don't get to it, you don't get to it. But you know you got to get to it the next day. But don't check off anything without you actually having to do it. Because if you get a spot visit and it turns out you didn't do it, but you checked it off, that is falsification of company documentations, which is immediately terminated event. Power of that. But here's a question of all that you have to be kind of aware of. What are you measuring? So you got to measure what matters. You got to have that checklist set up, check off things that matter. Measure what matters. Now, this is not something that you can do easily. This is something that's going to take a little bit of time. You're going to have to sit down and really decide what matters. It takes some time. It is an art. Deciding on what matters is an art. Let me give you another example. So you can have a company, and let's say you hire a person who does your SEO, okay, and they're not really in your purview, but they report to you in a way. You don't know much about SEO. You need to sit down and figure that out for starters, what to measure. So the battle comes up, and okay, should I measure how many people like my page? Should I measure how many people have subscribed to our YouTube channel? Should we measure that? How many people have actually signed up to become clients? Which one of those 3 is most important to measure? Okay. You're going to decide that based upon, okay, it's more important that we have engagement. Because don't know if you're aware of this or not, it doesn't matter how many people subscribe to your page on YouTube anymore. Yeah, it's nice to subscribe. It's a service for the person who has subscribed to it. If they hit the bell, it gives them reminders to go to your show and look at it. But YouTube doesn't make the decision on whether to put that in front of people because of the subscriptions amount. Okay? The SEO. Okay. YouTube decides if they're going to put something in front of the people based on how many likes you get. Okay. And the more likes you get, the more it's going to get there. But does that liking the page really mean that much to you? Or does it mean engaging with that potential customer? As your SEO person, helping you engage with that person. What's most important to you? That's what you have to start to measure. Measure what is important to you. There's nothing I can do to sit down here and just tell you what to measure. We have to sit down and do some work. Look at your goals and where you're trying to get to. Oh, I'm saying thank you, but one last thing. Accountability. When you create accountability, you create this ideal, this knowledge that people want to be with you. Okay. Because they know what to expect. And when you can tell somebody what to expect on the job, they can kind of plan that out. You create loyalty. Also, it takes them to that next level. Oh, it's expected at this level, but if I want this next level, I know I need to be able to operate at that expectation level. You want to create a dream team? Let your people know where they're going, verify and measure that they're heading there, hold them accountable to that. Because once somebody starts to backslide and they don't get held accountable to that, they will continue to, and they'll poison your entire organization. Hey, Joe, why do that? I mean, I don't see why you're doing that, because they say they want you to do it, but they never check up on it. You've had that. In fact, you might have even been guilty of doing that. I have. Now, I won't admit that. But the thing is, create that accountability, let that person know what's expected of them, measure that expectation that is being accomplished. All righty. So I want to thank you very much for dropping in. See you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Have a great, great day.